Thanks very much. Asa Lovejoy from Boston and Francis Pettygrove from Portland, Maine stood on the banks of a river in the far American West and tossed a coin. They were picking the name for the town that they were founding. And to our great good fortune, the guy from Portland, Maine won. Can you imagine being Boston, Oregon all these years? The confusion would have been regrettable. And Portland has been a combination of intention and good luck ever since. The town that they founded started growing into a city in the late Victorian era, boomed during the Roaring 20s, built 200 miles of streetcars to serve the neighborhoods across the river town that grew across both sides of the river into a city in the modern era. And based on that success, the city's leaders said, we want to become a great city, and started thinking about planning. And we've been doing that in Portland with some success ever since. They hired the son of Frederick Law Olmsted, Charles Olmsted, to come to Portland and do a parks plan. And he said some amazing and visionary things. He said, you know, someday it will be a long trip from the city of Portland to forests, so you should build a forest reserve into your park system. Someday that top of the old volcano, Mount Tabor, will be in the center of the community and would be a lovely place for a park. And we had the good sense as a community to follow that plan. And one of the jewels of Portland is our amazing park system, over 200 parks, the largest wilderness park in the city limits in the United States with Forest Park, and something that Portlanders of all ages and conditions enjoy. So we've had some success in our early years, and we're off to a good start. But then in the mid-century, we experienced a lot of the regrettable mistakes of planning and city design that almost every city did. This is one of my favorite quotes from that era. Americans will soon have every facility for moving about the city and no reason whatsoever to go there. Lewis Mumford could have said that about Portland too, because we hollowed out the city. We provided an enormous amount of room for parking. We got rid of that clunky old streetcar system and had a nice public bonfire to celebrate. We built highways as fast as we could, and again, tried to make this river town work especially well for the automobile. We kept these two ladies, Miss Concrete and Miss Blacktop, very busy during that era, trying to make the city work in what we thought was the modern era. And those were bad years for Portland, as they were for a lot of cities, both culturally, racially, economically, and physically. We declined. But again, to our good fortune in Portland, we started to notice those trends and started to plan again in the second half of the last century. We did some bold and now well-known things. We said suburbia should stop at some point and the farmland should be preserved. So we created urban growth boundaries, and they're still there and they still work. We started thinking about transportation as well as land use planning, and started putting those two ideas together, starting one of the nation's first light rail systems. We moved a highway off of our waterfront and built a signature downtown park, Waterfront Park. We kept the old. We were leaders in the historic preservation movement, but we also embraced the new, the light rail, the higher density, the mixed use ideas that were coming into their own, and that my friend Ralph Becker has helped lead in his part of the West. We also started thinking about being inclusive, and in the 70s, created a city office of neighborhood involvement, one of the first in the country. The mayor at the time opposed the idea and thundered that we were funding the opposition. Probably true in his case, but that was okay. And that opposition has gone on to become part of the fabric of how we plan and how we are stewards of these bold ideas that Portland has carried out over the years. One of those now is our Climate Action Plan, a now 20-year-old document. We were one of the first there as well, where we've reduced per capita carbon emissions by 30%, and we've reduced it 10% overall, despite being a fast-growing Western city. We're proud of that success. We're also proud of what we've done in smart development. This is the Pearl District, which you might have heard of before, or rather just as we got started, by building the first modern American streetcar to stitch together what would be one of the most successful new urbanist neighborhoods in the United States. The streetcar and the light rail system have continued to grow. We continue to expand that system into more areas of our metropolitan area, not just the city of Portland. And we're getting more and more people around, despite our drizzly climate, by bicycle. We're one of the best bike cities in America. And we now have about 8,000 bike commuters who reach our downtown each day across the 4 principal bridges coming across the Willamette. We carried a little further with the expansion of our transit system into the South Waterfront using an aerial tram, the first in the United States to serve this kind of transit purpose, to connect the streetcar, the light rail system, and now the east side of the river with the first bridge in the United States for trains, bikes, walkers, buses, and no cars. So we're proud of these successes. They've defined us as a national leader in smart growth and transportation. They've been big and bold ideas, and we're ready for some more of them. But our secret ingredient for the moment, our bright idea for right now, the thing we should do next is our job. We should do the basics well, because we have left some of those behind in our success story in Portland, just as we have left some of our people behind by failing to reach them with those basic services. We have a rather large part of our city that's been annexed to Portland over the years that doesn't enjoy the benefits of being a complete neighborhood. We have 5,000 miles of streets to take care of, but not all of them are complete streets. Not all of them are paved. Many of them don't have sidewalks, safe crossings, bike lanes. So that basic infrastructure is not there in a regrettably large part of what's otherwise a very livable American city. We also faced some other basic problems when our team came into City Hall, a $25 million budget deficit and a $400 million general fund budget. The city had been using our urban renewal areas like ATMs, building projects that didn't necessarily uplift the neighborhoods that they were located in, but met the political agenda of whoever happened to be in office at the time. The city had actually disavowed responsibility for paving neighborhood streets and had sold the equipment that was used to slurry seal a street so that it wouldn't crack and fall apart and need to be completely rebuilt. So we focused a lot in the last year on getting those things right and getting those basics in place in order to be able to move ahead on more big ideas. We had to cut city spending to respond to that $25 million deficit. We asked our bureaus to submit modified zero-based budgets at 90% of what they'd done the year before, and actually cut our public safety budget in order to balance the budget. We set a paving goal of 100 lane miles a year, up from 30 lane miles the year before, with the money that we already had in transportation. We kept our AAA bond rating. We're one of that handful of American cities that has this coveted bond rating, and it helps us sell debt at the most reasonable possible cost, and we've hung on to it despite this financial downdraft that we found ourselves in. And we paid down debt, thus putting the city in the position this year of having a modest budget surplus instead of that $20 or $25 million deficit. Now, we could hope, and I think some of our previous speakers today have alluded to this, that the federal government might help us with this giant job of maintaining and paving our streets, providing this most important basic service. And that's my conclusion. And I don't think it's hard to reach that conclusion when you look at the performance of the federal government over the last couple of decades with respect to transportation. It's pretty hard to think otherwise. Hope is not a strategy, and I don't think it's reasonable to hope that the federal government will save us when it comes to this kind of infrastructure investment. And we need to take care of this problem ourselves. There are other examples. The Superfund, of course, is neither. And for those of us who have Superfund liabilities, we'll find ourselves having to fund that locally as well. You know, my friend Bruce Katz at the Brookings Institution says the federal government's in the process of becoming a healthcare company with an army and a little more. And that's perhaps a little simplistic and a little harsh, but I think helps make the point that if we have a critical basic community need like this in an American city, it's our job, it's our responsibility. The people we work for really expect us to take care of this. The Congress has had the opportunity to keep the federal gas tax current, but they haven't. The last time they increased it, they only increased it by 4 cents, and it has declined in spending power over the last couple of decades, so that it now is actually less in total spending ability than it was in 1993. We need a lot more revenue for transportation than we had in 1993. So here's the next big idea in the city of Portland. We're going to look our citizens in the face and tell them about this problem and tell them that we're going to raise their taxes and do our job. That's our basic responsibility. And if it's an innovation for Portland to just come right out and say it, that we're going to raise your taxes and fix your streets, then we're as happy to try that concept out as we were urban growth boundaries, smart growth, and light rail. Now, if we do those things, if we have that direct conversation, if we keep people with us on the basics, there are lots of opportunities in Portland. Our Central East Side is a booming area for startups and small makers. In fact, some of the local businesses there want to change the name to Makertown because we have all these brewers and manufacturers and designers that are coming into that district and making it from industrial 20th century into industrial 21st. We have a Superfund cleanup of our river. It's a liability, but it's also a possibility that if we do that right, we free up thousands of acres of formerly industrial land along our river to be, once again, industrial land, because we're a manufacturing city, and we want to be a manufacturing city for the next generation as well. Our Martin Luther King Boulevard is not a failure, but not yet the success that our community wants it to be. Maybe with a kind of inclusive community process that we like to have in Portland and a streetcar, it could be that next great Portland success story. We have ambitions to have the best cancer research center in the United States. What? Portland? But the Oregon Health Sciences University and their path-breaking leader, Dr. Brian Drucker, invented Gleevec, the most amazing anti-leukemia drug so far in the battle against that kind of cancer. And inspired by his work, Phil and Penny Knight, the founders of Nike, have offered OHSU a $500 million challenge grant. And if they match it, they'll have $1 billion to expand that institution, the one that's connected by the aerial tram, the streetcar, the light rail, and the new bridge. $500 million is 4 times the largest gift ever given to Harvard. So I think this might just put our medical facility in Portland on the map. We're the next candidate city, or one of the next candidate cities, for Google Fiber across the city, something that's worked so well for Kansas City and the other early adopters of that program with Google. We're in the process now of figuring out all the permits and logistics, and by early May plan to deliver our report to Google that, yes, indeed, this is possible, and we'll get it done with you. And we're a vortex of the sharing economy. Airbnb decided to locate their North American headquarters in Portland, not just because we have a cool downtown on light rail where their folks would like to work, but because the values of the sharing economy are so strong in Portland. Our hope is that with this focus on the basics and these planning traditions that we've had in Portland, that we can move more quickly to make every neighborhood in Portland a complete community. The idea of complete streets isn't unique to us. The idea of excellent public spaces is not unique to us, but we need to get those concepts spread across more of our neighborhoods, particularly those areas that have been annexed to the city, as I mentioned, and didn't have the benefit of the bones of the streetcar era and the vision of the original Parks Plan. Those of you who had a chance to come to Portland have probably seen some of the scenes that I've shown you, but hopefully you'll see that kind of walkable urbanism across a lot more of our city in the next few years ahead. The diversity of opportunity in Portland is great. We're growing fast, and we're a tech hub like many of the cities represented here, but we're also still a real manufacturing city. We make steel, we make things out of steel, and we sell them to the world. We have a goal of doubling our exports in the city of Portland over the next 10 years, and I think we might just do it. We also have the opportunity to take the ideas that we proved out in downtown and elsewhere in our central city and show them to the rest of the community. Great public spaces like Pioneer Courthouse Square. We celebrated the birthday of Pioneer Courthouse Square on a beautiful day like this last Sunday. Had 5,000 of our friends and neighbors out there doing a sing-along in the middle of this beautiful public space. And it just was a wonderful, inspiring moment, and one of those times when you just know it's great to be mayor. Google Fiber is a great opportunity. OHSU is a great opportunity. All of these things are great opportunities for us in Portland, the sharing economy, but we must keep our citizens with us. We must not be so visionary that we lose that social contract with the majority of our citizens that want safe streets, green parks, good schools, and affordable basic public services in every neighborhood, especially their own. I think Portland has the opportunity to prove out that principle and to take these opportunities and make them real. But first, we do have to deliver on that basic promise. Get people the kinds of amenities that they've had downtown, Waterfront Park, Pioneer Courthouse Square, and show them that kind of livability in the whole city. So you've heard about Portlandia. It actually started with a statue, a Raymond Caskey statue that we used to decorate that building. It now, of course, has become a television show. I can't tell you how many people around the world seem to have found this crazy little television show. I was just in Johannesburg for the C40 Climate Summit, and people in Johannesburg are watching Portlandia. So for better or for worse, it's our brand. Just like streetcars, great parks, walkability, urban containment, and smart growth are our brand as well. I hope that we can report back to you soon in another TED Talk like this, that the promise of Portland has been delivered to more people, that we've made good on that promise of basic services by being straight with people, looking them in the face and saying, we're largely on our own here, way out in the West. Congress is a long way away. They're not helping. We're going to tax ourselves, fix our streets, build more parks, and make Portland more livable for everyone. I hope that will be an example that will give me bragging rights at another one of these great gatherings. Thank you very much.